2007. This evening, City Council is meeting in a special session. We do have a quorum with 5 of 7 members present. Are there any communications anyone wishes to share with council? We do have a memorandum from the law director referring to the Sherwin-Williams paint lawsuit has been dismissed, and that's about all I have. Reports and communications from other elected officials. Mayor Abel.
There's no reports during a special session of council.
I was wondering why that was on the agenda.
Should have said regular session.
So I didn't prepare myself for a report.
What happens when you use old files?
I guess so. Well, let's go on to ordinances for third reading. Thank goodness most people are out of town and not watching this.
They'll watch the rerun.
Yeah. Maybe the government
Christmas
channel
Day.
people can clean this up a little bit before we rerun it.
It'd take more than
Little editing, Joe. Okay. Ordinance 13207, an ordinance amending the Athens City Code Title 5 Water and Sewer Regulations. Member Bain.
Mr. President, at this time, I'd like to move to adopt 13207.
Second.
13207 will raise the sewer tap fees to approximately 1.5 times their existing amount. At this point in time, we use a EPA basis, so the only thing that's changed is the amount. It's the way that people coming into the system purchase, to some extent, in a token way or some way, inclusion into the system. The other thing that's there is an effort to prevent people from pressuring the city to grant them credits for previous taps and so on and so forth, trying to clean up that a bit. So that's what's in 13207.
Motion and a second to adopt ordinance 132. Is there further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the ordinance?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 14007, an ordinance granting a revocable license to Howard Welser, owner 66 Maplewood Drive, to allow a fence to encroach into the city right-of-way. Member Phillips.
Move adoption of 14007.
Second.
It's really straightforward. He's actually begun construction of this fence before he realized that it was encroaching in the right-of-way, and then he did come in and provide a presentation. Andy Stone looked at the line of sight questions, and people are able to make a turn without having their sight obstructed by this fence.
Further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 140?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. On to ordinances for second reading. Ordinance 14407, an ordinance granting a variance from the Athens City subdivision regulations to Eileen Clark for a property located outside the corporate limit but within the 3-mile jurisdiction to allow a minor subdivision. Ordinance 14607, an ordinance amending the 2007 appropriation ordinance and the 2007 interfund transfer ordinance.
Mr. President,
Member Sands.
at this time, I would like to move that we amend ordinance 14607.
Second.
Things never go as easily as they possibly could. So let's look at this ordinance. I think I gave copies of the amendments to all the members. Originally, this ordinance was up for approval to allow the municipal court to move approximately $35,000 from their drug court fund to their DUI court fund. It involves more bookkeeping than one would think because these are special funds and the auditor's rules don't allow special funds to be transferred with each other. So this was a kind of a convoluted transfer. Now we're adding a couple things to this. In section 2, there are several interfund transfer mentions from a fund to another fund with the amount to follow. We are amending the amount in the FEMA grant 588 sewer 750 fund. That amount was $601,174.07, where it's being amended to $336.24. This is FEMA grants that the city has received to complete the work for sewer and water lines on Columbus Road with regards to the breakdown along the river. In the FEMA funds, in the end, we should receive this in total $601,000, but in calendar year 2007, all that we have received so far is $336,246. So that's an amendment just to make that reflect reality a little bit more. Section 3, we're adding a phrase at the end of Section 3. From the unappropriated balance, we are appropriating $265,000 to the sewer debt fund, $750, and this is to reflect money that has been received and it's being removed from the water debt fund. I think it was inadvertently all put together when the funds came in. And we're adding a Section 4. Section 4 is amending street fund transaction class 500, which is the capital improvements line, and by $10,000, and transferring that $10,000 to the street fund transaction class 200, which is a supply line. This is to allow the street department to purchase additional salt for the streets in 2006. We have an ordinance coming up tonight for 2007, but with the snow events that we had earlier last week, they feel that they need additional salt to get through this year. So they have the money in another fund. We're just allowing them to transfer it from their capital improvements into their supply. Those are the amendments to this ordinance. Any questions?
No other discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you. Ordinance 148 is... Oh, I'm sorry, we did not. I'm missing everything. Okay. Motion and a second to amend ordinance 14607. No further discussions. All those in favor of amending the ordinance?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time. You're not moving to adopt tonight? No. Okay. Ordinance 14807, an ordinance authorizing the auditor to reduce year-end appropriation.
And I'm...
Okay. Ordinance 14907, an ordinance amending ordinance 5306, a fringe benefit package for non-union personnel within the city of Athens. Ordinance 15007, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Athens, Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31, 2008.
Mr. President, for this ordinance and the following one, you might ask the mayor if he has any comments. He's actually preparing the flow charts that go with these ordinances. If not, we'll talk about it more next week.
We're continuing with it. The only feedback I got from anyone was from the treasurer's office on the overall budget this past week. I finished with the personnel part of it, and that's into the auditor's office for review. And I eagerly hope they find all my mistakes.
Okay, thank you.
Rewind.
Ordinance 15107, an ordinance authorizing staffing levels, a non-union pay scale, and slotting for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2008, repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 15207, an ordinance authorizing a stop-loss medical insurance contract and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 15307, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of chlorine, fluoride, salt, caustic soda, and sulfur dioxide. Ordinance 15407, an ordinance authorizing the cleaning and repair of water wells. Ordinance 15507, an ordinance authorizing construction of the East 8th Street Bike Path extension from Cook Drive towards Stroud's Run Drive, project number 223, and declaring an emergency. And even though our agenda has announcements and other business and an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items, those items should not be on our agenda since this is a special session. Having addressed all items on our agenda, we stand adjourned. Planning and Development Committee.
Okay. We have a Planning and Development Committee scheduled this evening, mainly to hear an update from the farmers market. So take it away.
Okay. My name is Sarah Conley, and I am the market manager for the Athens Farmers Market. I'd like to play you a small video made by a fellow named Stan Alost. He's a local guy who has made us a really nice video. Kind of gives you an introduction into our market.
Every Saturday, the empty parking lot of the University Mall in Athens, Ohio, blossoms into a unique 3-hour adventure of capitalism. But it's become much more than just buying and selling. It is a social event full of fun, food, and music.
Athens Farmers Market started in 1972 with the help of the city and local officials and citizens, and that makes it over 35 years old now. And I've been the manager for 15 years. And it's always been a producers-only market. In other words, people that are selling goods that they've grown, produced, to process themselves. And some rural and crafts in general are excluded. It is defined by being producers only and also being a reflection of the surrounding territory, which has a lot of small farms and specialty producers.
Jack Cantrell from Cantrell Honey and Candy from down in Shade, Ohio. Been coming to the market about 7 years. The market is unique. It's very community oriented. A lot of people, it's a gathering place for people, social place, and also the quality of the food that's available.
I'm Margaret Pierce. I've been coming to the market since I moved here in fall 2005. And I love this market. It's full of great, friendly vibe and lots of different delicious foods. And I like the farmers a lot. And it's a wonderful way to end the week and start a new week.
Again, the community is there seeing each other in an informal, trusting atmosphere, and the growers, producers, and their customers get to engage in face-to-face, ongoing, trustworthy, mutually rewarding relationships as well. So that's different than your typical shopping experience. And Athens, of course, is a relatively small town, so it has some of the small town atmosphere of recognizing the faces. Things aren't quite so hurry-worry, and it has a certain, small town aspect to it that really plays out every time the market's open.
Take it, ladies.
And to leave that for
So as you can see, the market has really grown over the years at the University Mall site. And I think it was our hope for many years now to be able to build the Market Pavilion on that property. But in August of this past year, the lease agreements that we had hoped to be able to resolve with Tom Parfit and Brent Hayes just broke down, essentially. So the market, as it was in 1999, having to relocate from the community center property, now finds itself once again as sort of the nomads wandering in the wilderness of East State Street. So essentially, we still have money raised to secure a shelter for the market. And probably since we've been here the last time, we have secured additional funds, $25,000 from the Appalachian Regional Commission. In August, we received $50,000 from the Kellogg Foundation to continue planning and probably spend some of that money now allocating new site review work that we're going to have to do as we look for a new location. And there's a promise from the Kellogg Foundation that once we actually do have a final location, that there will be additional funding. So if you count the money from the Ohio Department of Development, the Ohio Department of Agriculture, the foundation funds, hopefully the local fundraising campaign that will be reinitiated when we have a more secure location in mind, we still have around probably $650,000 available to build a structure. Unfortunately, the mall location does not seem feasible at this point in time. So we're here basically to update Council on what we hope to accomplish in 2008. One is to relocate the market back to city property adjacent to the community center, and then to continue to identify funders and secure funding for a permanent pavilion facility. Hopefully, using some of the architectural drawings that we have already embarked on in 2006 and 2007. So Sarah's going to give a little bit of an update as our new market manager, what the process will be like to move the market sometime in 2008.
Our goal is to move the market in the spring of 2008. We intend to operate temporarily out of the auxiliary parking lot, which is to the east of the community center. We will be doing a pre-feasibility study in order to determine where the location of the permanent pavilion site will be. Again, Leslie mentioned that funding has been secured. We have drafted a lease with the city, both with Ray Hazlitt and with Mayor Rick Abel. We're pending the approval of that by the law director. And we've also been using some storage on site at the off of East Park Drive that we hope to continue to use and potentially relocate closer to our site. We have come up with a configuration for which the market will operate. We intend to use less than 50% of the parking lot for our vendor and our market operations, so that the rest of the parking lot can be maximized for customer parking. We realize that ingress and egress for the customers will be probably one of the biggest issues, and so we're looking ahead to requiring more signage and having parking attendants on site. We have some short-term and long-term site modifications, and I'll pass around just sort of a list of these things. Again, we'd like to discuss some traffic control issues, as well as potentially having traffic control assistance on East State Street during our busy market season. And to give you an idea, between May and October, our market sees an average of 1,500 customers. And again, the market's been operating on East State Street. These will be new cars coming down State Street, yet they will be coming to a new site, and potentially a far more congested site than the University Mall. So we'd like to discuss that issue. We'd like to revamp that parking lot, of course, to removing some of the parking blocks We also need phone and electrical lines on site to run our EBT machine, our food stamp operation at the market. Relocation of storage shed, and we also need to mark our vendor selling spaces on the ground. We've also discussed paving a walking ramp between the Athens Mall lot and the community center lot, so that's another thing on the agenda. Some long-term site modifications. We anticipate the design that you see up here is the design that had been drafted for the University Mall site, and so just to give you an idea of one configuration, obviously it will have to be considered based on the site chosen for our design. We were hoping that this would be a potential multi-purpose public use facility as opposed to just the farmers market site, so it can be used on other days. An incorporation of green technology into the site design. We also hope to launch a Sunday afternoon market, and this would be in collaboration with the Arts Collaborative as of May 2008. This is also so our vendors who may not be able to make it on Saturday market can use our Sunday market. We anticipate building some more relations with the city, including with Arts, Parks, and Recreation, and maybe establishing a committee that would oversee the use of the market pavilion when that day comes. And that's all I have to say. Questions? I don't know if you take questions. I can answer any questions you might have. Yes, Paul.
So the old configuration of the pavilion when it was at University Mall was going to fit all your farm marketeers, or?
It was set up in order to accommodate vendors underneath the pavilion, and then also there was sort of these wings that we designed on the outside where outdoor vendors could set up, and that would sort of expand and contract with the size of our market during the year. That was the design, and I assume we'd do something similar at this new site so that the actual structure doesn't necessarily need to accommodate the entire large market during the business season.
And in the short term, I think you showed me a map sometime last month about this, and you're talking about maybe 60 stalls at this point?
Yeah, roughly 60 stalls. Some vendors need more space than others, so but that is roughly. Consider it less than 50% of the parking lot set up for the vendors, and there's certainly we've figured out the logistics per vendor.
Okay, and what's the status of the agreement you have with the city right now?
I guess we're just pending approval on that. I haven't gotten the lease agreement back, but we drafted it, so that's where that stands today.
Okay.
Any other?
When you said 60 stalls, is that approximately what you have on a usual day?
This past year, our peak vendor attendance was 65 vendors at a market. Again, some vendors require more space than others. However, in this new site, we intend to limit their space to the 10 by 10 stall. Some will use a smaller space than that. So, in fact, we are going to be condensing our market quite a bit. We've enjoyed the real estate over on University Mall site. We've been able to expand a lot. So we will be limiting them, and again, never expanding beyond that 50% of the lot. So our customers we can maximize the customer site.
Have you talked with the folks at the Athens Mall about this ramp and any issues around parking lot there?
Well, as far as we understand, there has been some conversations with, John Katowski, thank you, who, as we understand it, Kroger's is considered part of the Athens Mall, and Kroger's corporate has a non-competition clause for use of that parking lot. And so we were told that it's best to not try to get anything formal or in writing for the use of that parking lot, and instead, leaving it up to our customers, accommodating as many spaces as we can in the community center site, and then if overflow parking takes place in the Athens Mall, that's, I guess, something that happens. We do intend to make sure that Monroe Muffler and Ponderosa, our closest neighbors there, know that this is, coming and that we establish good relations with them early on. So, other questions?
I had a question. early in the presentation, and I think you answered it. Your plans are to, although this is a temporary setup, but your plans are to permanently locate to the community center site.
Yes.
Is that indicated in the lease that you've drafted?
It is indicated in the lease. It is
Okay.
generally indicated, yeah. Basically, we said that we're hoping to find a permanent, that a permanent site be established on city property. Where that will be, I guess, it will be determined by the site.
Well, that's what I was going to say, that
Yeah.
obviously the phrases, the phrasing has to be loose at this point.
It
But
is
that-
loose
But
at
that's
this
your
point.
intention to, as you're there, to feel it out and in conjunction with the community center staff and see what works.
And so far, that's how it's been going, yeah. We've all just been sort of dreaming big dreams and hoping that plans are made more concretely this coming year. So.
Okay. Wonderful.
So is, questions about the lease? We weren't really aware there was one in train.
Okay.
Last to know.
That's to know. Is there money involved in this, or is it just an agreement, and how long is it for?
It's just an agreement at this point. The market historically has not had to pay any rental fees, and in fact, that's part of the reason why we are no longer able to stay at the University Mall site. There's no agreement on staying around rent-free. So we understand as of this point that it's a rent-free agreement, and when the facility is built, if there are maintenance costs or additional expenses that can be footed by the market, we certainly are open for that discussion. We're just a pretty small operation at this point, so it can be dependent on that future construction, or at least that's how I understand the lease to have been drafted. Yeah.
So how long is the lease for, ever, or for
What did
2
we
years?
set it
or-
at?
I mean, it seems to me
It was a
that
long-
there's,
It was a long-term agreement. I think we agreed on, well, that was going to be left up to Gary, as far as I understand. He
left
wasn't-
up to Gary.
No,
I mean,
left
it
up to
seems,
council.
it
Just
seems to
because
me
we
that-
didn't know how long, if the city had any restrictions on how long they are able to, go under binding contract with an organization like ours. That's kind of where we left it, as far as I recall.
Well, if you're building things on an existing site, it would seem that council should have some input.
They're not building yet.
Yeah, no, eventually. I mean, that's why I
Well,
want
I
to know
think-
about the length of the lease
Yeah.
agreement. Okay, so you're parking your buggies twice a week, okay, but once you start into that other
But I think
phase-
the issue is that by ordinance, the city has provided in the past
Right.
space for the farmer's market. And I think what the Market Association is looking for now in the future is that beyond the language in the ordinance, especially as we prepare to build a pavilion that's going to be multi-purpose beyond the farmer's market, that there is some lease agreement, because I think the Market Association recognizes that it has to build its capacity to be able to contribute financially to the maintenance of a new facility once it is built.
But it just would seem to me that you would want to have some public discussion before a building is imagined, and this would be an ideal place to have it.
Oh, I think there'll be a lot
I mean,
of
I just
public
cannot
discussion.
understand how you can enter into a lease agreement without us knowing, and so I'm puzzled by it.
I think what the Market Association has done is propose language for a potential lease.
I mean, I'm all in favor
That
of.
will come to us.
Will it?
Certainly,
Well-
it seems as though it's kind of in rough draft phase at this point, as I understood it. I would imagine where everyone else stands with it too.
I mean, we're already talked to the university, and you haven't talked to us. Just wondering what's going on.
Well, and I should say that, Leslie did initiate this communication and just say we need to come and make a report because we've been working on these issues and trying to figure things out, and council needs to be in the loop. So, I mean, that's what this is an attempt to do.
And I've had conversations with Sarah and Leslie about some of this. I wasn't aware the lease was in train right now, but at the same time, I'm aware of the fact that they're looking for a long-term home, and they're looking for a short-term home as well, and to construct a plan. So this is one of the reasons why they came to us right now, because time's getting short, and they want to be talking to the present council as well as the future council.
And present and future administration. I
Yes.
mean, I think, this has been such a challenging project since the market relocated to the University Mall in 1999. We've looked at a variety of different sites, and as someone who has been the main project manager trying to raise the financial resources, the challenge, I think, is that the vendors are very interested and the customers are very interested that the market remains somewhere on East State Street. But I think we all recognize that that is the most premiumly priced real estate right now in the city of Athens. So the location continues to be very challenging. And I think the way the market has grown exponentially in those many years, almost 10 years that we've been in the mall parking lot, we've had to re-envision what this market is and what it means, not just, I think, to the city of Athens, but to, the region overall. And, the city has been very gracious, I think, in trying to meet with us. This is the second architectural plans we've been on since '99, and I'm sure we'll be at some point reviewing at least a third version if we can move forward with an actual structure.
I'd just like for you to consider in the lease in one of your bullets up there, it was assist with parking, attendance, et cetera. The exponential growth in the market has been reflected in the exponential growth in traffic down in front of the University Mall, which has much better ingress and egress than we do. And so planning is important, but I still think, at least I personally think, that somebody's going to have to provide some uniformed officers out on the street to get people in and out. And I'd like for you to think about, could you participate in those expenses that will occur?
And I think that's why we really anticipated the need for a lease, so that there would be clarification as to what the market really needs to step up
Absolutely.
to and provide, so that we can prepare that in the market's budget as well. So, I apologize if it seems premature that we're talking about a lease agreement, but I think from the market association's perspective, we wanted to be able to really start that ball. So, just from our recent learning experience, trying to work with private developers, that was sort of one of the pitfalls in trying to move the pavilion project forward. So to be able to really get the issues out and figure out what our responsibilities are going to be as the market association on the table before we move, would be, I think, best for the city, the Farmers Market Association, and the customer.
Well,
So there's a couple things you're talking about. In the short term, you have a timeline that will move you in sometime March, April, and things have to be done by then, and hopefully there's some kind of short-term lease there. From my previous conversation with you, we were talking about the need for a site review of the entire community center complex, which would be on your dime, if I understand correctly.
Yes.
And therefore, then the idea is to come forward with a plan for a pavilion possibly, if that works out. That's what I'm hearing, right?
I mean, I think at some point we need to get back to these funders, where we've been raising money since 2004, or trying to raise money since 2004. So we need to, determine what's really going to be possible in 2008, 2009.
I know you've done a lot of, I go to farmers market regularly, so I see you always doing questionnaires and surveys all the time. Do you have any idea how many people would, one of the complaints I hear about is it's too far out of town. If you're moving back into town, do you have any anticipation how many people wouldn't be getting into cars to go to the farmers market?
Well, I'm hoping, in terms of anecdotal information and in surveys, that at least 10% of market customers in good weather would either come as pedestrians or come along the bike path. And, as pedestrians or on bicycles or rollerblades or skateboards, or however they would like to come and shop at the market. One of the things that we've set aside was Project for Public Spaces money that we received this year to launch the food stamp project at the farmers market. We've set aside some marketing funds from that budget, and I was hoping that that money all needs to be spent down probably by the end of March, that we could use some of that marketing money to really promote a pedestrian campaign, so that if the market does move and is relocated on the community center's property, that we would sort of hit the ground running, encouraging people in the spring to come to the market by foot or by bike.
Okay.
Nancy?
I just wanted to say that 2 people out of the 5 that are here mentioned it already, and I guess I'll be the third. I think that we would like to have you to consider to put some money into the mix with us, maybe $1 a person. I heard earlier that that was one of the reasons for moving, but I think a modest amount would help us offset the issues, which is why I'm alarmed about the discussion of a lease when that wasn't ever. So, I mean, just a word to the wise. I think you can hear this again and again from us as it goes
And
forward.
I think the market is certainly prepared to pay rent in 2008.
Okay.
I think
I mean,
certainly the board of the market has discussed that.
It's definitely something that we're aware that may come up. We are drafting the budget for 2008 and intend to, we have additional money set aside for needs with relocation. So we're open for the discussion at this point.
Anybody else? Thank you for coming to give us an update.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I have just 2 things I want to mention as miscellaneous. There are 2 groups that have worked on and provided some recommendations to us. That would be the Floodplain Task Force and the Tree Commission. But given how late it is in the year, my intention is to hang on to those and take them up at the beginning of the next year and not try to get into that discussion. But I just wanted you all to know that we do have those things coming. Did anyone else have miscellaneous for planning and development? Okay, then we're adjourned.